we need to talk. Because do you remember a couple seasons ago, Christine was with Robin, and she was talking with Robin about being a basement wife. And Janelle and Mary kind of acted like they had never heard of this term about basement wives, and they were kind of like befuddled that this was even being brought up, and Robin was sort of like, I don't even know what you're talking about, you know, protecting polygamy. And now, today and last couple days, episodes ago, Christine and David are talking about the basement wife issue, and Mary acknowledges that yes, there is a concept of a basement wife, and Janelle acknowledges that yes, there is a concept of a basement wife. And now today, they're changing stories that, well, we were all sort of basement wives or favorites at some point in time. And to a degree, she's right. They had more money when Mary was made the basement wife because essentially she was divorced and no longer the legal wife, and she was put out to pasture and neglected by Kody. But yeah, like in the early years for sure, if you read their book, Mary had issues with Kody and she felt like she was being sidelined, and Janelle had moments where she felt she was being sidelined, and Christine felt like she was being sidelined, and they all played different roles in Kody's lives. And he kind of bounced around whoever was meeting his needs the best at the time. Right, but there is something to be said about being the official wife, right? Being the legal wife, because you get to go do things with your husband the other ones don't get to do. And you don't have to hide, because formally speaking, this is the wife that you're representing to the world that is your wife. It's the first wife. And Christine spoke about the basement wife problem with David in this most recent episode. I used to be a basement wife. In polygamy, there is a word basement wife. I'm having like nervousness about it. It's almost like a wife in polygamy is, you know, in houses, there's often a basement, and a wife sometimes has to live in the basement, but the idea behind it is that you really are below another wife. I was one the last time we lived in Lehigh, and I really honestly felt like it. Did you do rock, paper, scissors? So the basement wife, in theory, is that you are put in the most undesirable place in the home, and you are actually underneath the wife, because you can't live in the main living area. It was a little bit different in Lehigh because they had 3 separate apartments and they were all kind of living in a neighborhood of other polygamists, right? But if you think about it in the context of you are in the basement, and you are in the basement because you cannot be in the main house because you need to be hidden, right? And then you are because you are not the formal wife, you are being hidden. You know, Kristen Decker in her book, she wrote about the basement wife. She was the official wife, and her husband took a second wife, and that wife lived in the basement. And while the basement wife concept in theory is true from Kristen's perspective, much probably like Mary's perspective, the basement wife, while yes, they had to hide, I don't think Kristen felt like she was more important than that wife in the basement, because she has a chapter where she talks about she was looking for her husband one day, and it was on the day that she and her husband were supposed to be together, and she goes downstairs to see if, you know, her sister wife knows where the husband is, and she finds her husband in bed with the sister wife on her day, which she felt was like a betrayal. So I think, you know, if you understand it from all sides, they all kind of feel like they're the basement wife in some context, but truly the wife that's not legal is the hidden wife. And Rob and Christine definitely was the wife that was kind of like Cinderella. They took advantage of her. She had to do all the cooking, the cleaning, and the kid rearing. She was the one that was meant to manage all the conflicts and be the mediator. There was a lot of pressure on Christine to keep the peace, right? And so when you talk about these apologies that have recently happened, you kind of understand why Christine's like, I don't want to have conflict with him. I just want to like go away. Get away from me. I've been in the middle of this fight for years, right? So Christine is the lower wife. And at least in Lehigh, there is this idea of a basement wife in plural family, and it's really sad, unfortunate that it's a thing, but it kind of is a thing. I think in plural marriage, like, I think everybody takes a turn, maybe being the basement wife, I don't know, like, I was the basement wife plenty it. Was never, ever, ever condoned by our church for there ever to be hierarchy. So if it was happening, it was because people weren't being cool. I wanted to show you the 3 responses from each one of the women so you can see how each one of them answered it. So Mary acknowledges that basement wife is definitely a concept that happens. It's terribly sad when it happens, and it truly is a part of their culture. She does not deny that it happened. Okay, Janelle says instead of admitting that it happened, she says it does happen. But I was the basement wife too plenty in the early years. Now, Janelle was the second wife, right? So she came in after Mary before Christine, but she and Kody weren't together very long before Christine came in. So certainly when it was just Janelle and Mary, she may have been the basement wife 100%. But once Christine entered the picture, it was very clear in their book, even by Janelle's own admission, how much she depended on Christine. And Christine wrote in her book, as much as she loves Janelle today, she was always Janelle's taskmaster, the person that organized Janelle's life, the one that took care of her kids, the one that managed the cooking and the cleaning and stuff. And so for her living with Janelle again, when they were going to live in one place, she felt like she might end up in a situation again with Janelle, where Janelle might be sort of dictating to her what she needs to do. And that's just how their characters probably fit together. Christine is a very quiet person, and she's very gregarious, and she's very outgoing, but she doesn't like disagreement, and she's a people pleaser. And Janelle is more passive and reserved, but she's assertive and she's not afraid to speak her thoughts. And for a people pleaser, it's easy to get lost in that. But Robin says that is not allowed in our church. And so, if it's happening, it's because people weren't being cool. Now, I really wish Robin would build a better vocabulary because I feel like she uses that a lot. That wouldn't be cool, that wouldn't be good, whatever. But she's lying because it happens. And she's lying because she pulled rank herself. Here's what's the truth is if the legal marriage didn't matter, then Robin wouldn't have been trying so hard to become the legal wife. If her formal marriage didn't matter, once Kody quote-unquote adopted the kids, she could have just divorced Kody. There would have been no reason to have a formal marriage. But in their society, someone needs to be married legally so the man doesn't look like a philanderer, right? But if the legal marriage didn't matter like she claims and has claimed all these years, why did she spend all those years working so hard to become the legal wife and then once becoming the legal wife, change everything in the family dynamic and decide that all the money belonged to her, right? Why was she putting everyone in the basement after she became the official wife? She'll never admit that it happens because she was never the basement wife. She might claim she was when she became the fourth wife, but she was never. She was always the star. She had a nice house. She never lived in poverty with them ever. So Robin's take is, well, if it happens, it's because people aren't being cool. So, Robin, thank you for admitting that it wasn't cool of you to make the other women the basement wife. Soon as I married Kody, he was like, there's a lot of things that Mary does that I really, really like. Me to like them. Then maybe you should, do them like she does them. He liked the way that she cleaned and cooked and dressed and all of these things. And Mary was the legal wife, and so she'd have more chances to do things with Kody because she was the legal wife. So I felt like she was probably more important than I was. But I don't think that was on her. I really honestly don't. I think that Kody wasn't even meaning it to be fully honest. I don't think he was trying to. It sounds like Kody from the very beginning has basically compared the women to each other. Even though he claims that he doesn't do that, it's clear he does, because he did it with Robin, and he kept telling everyone to be more like Robin. And it sounds like with Mary, there were traits that she had. Whether it was that she was a very clean person, whether she cooked the way that he wanted to eat, whether it was the way that she chose to discipline the kids, or the order and the structure within her home, whatever it was, that was something he enjoyed about her. And he always said that he liked her order and he liked the fact that she kept things nice and clean, right? But I think if you were to compare it to others, there were probably things that Mary heard about Christine and Janelle that he said that I wish you were like them, right? Maybe he would say like, I wish you had a better, lighter attitude, or you were more easygoing, or you were less combative, or whatever. And with Janelle, maybe it was I wish you were more organized. I wish you were more loving. I wish you whatever, I wish you spoke your mind more. Whatever it was, he was triangulating them, right? I think the truth of it is that she's the formal wife. So Mary, from her viewpoint, will never see it like I was the favorite, I was in charge, I was this or that. But because she was the formal wife, she will never really understand in those early years what it was like to be the second wife or the third wife. So they all kind of are unable to see each other's viewpoint. And because Kody has clouded the waters and pit them against each other, I think it's really hard even today for them to maybe like have pity here. But I did like that Christine said, like, I don't know that Mary was trying to be that way. I don't even know if Kody was trying to be that way. I do think Kody was trying to be that way. And for Mary's part, she does respond to this idea and she shares her own experience, which is different. Her early years before Robin came in the family, it definitely felt like that Kody would rotate his attention or love between me and Janelle and Christine. And I knew it was very obvious that he was definitely rotating. It wasn't like there was one person who was his favorite the whole time until Robin came in the family, right? It was like he rotated, he took turns. So Mary's view is that he bounced around between favorites. And I think favorites is different than formal wife. And so I don't know that she'll really see it in the early days because she was the official wife, right? She'll never understand. They'll also never understand her position of what it's like to be the formal wife and have your husband take in what women, right? They're all only able to see from their own view. But it's at least nice to see that they're acknowledging parts of this culture that for years they denied. And another thing that has long been spoken about for a very, 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 very long time has been that Christine and Kody were actually connected. So they're like third cousins once removed. And legally speaking, that's allowed. But for the very first time on the show, Christine says that the reason why she married Kody was because she wanted to marry a convert because she didn't want to marry one of her cousins because the community is so, small, right? And she says that she ends up marrying someone she's connected to. Anyway, I knew growing up that I would have to marry a convert because I was truly related to everybody in the church. Huh? I did marry a convert, but I was still related to him too. What? Yeah, I'm related to Kody. That's not cool. Third cousins once removed is fully legal. Fully polygamy is not allowed. But third cousins once removed from Kody. Wow. Wow. There was always this joke about they were cousins, but they are so distant or connected, it's ridiculous. So, for the very first time on the show, we are finally told what we already knew was that Kody and Christine share like a great-great-grandparent, which is a distant cousin. It's a third cousin once removed, but they're still distantly connected. And you know what I think is funny is that it is officially not illegal to marry your third cousin. And they weren't ever formally married, by the way. And genetically speaking, there's very limited risk of passing on recessive genes or, problems with a child having birth defects. So, it's considered legal in that you're not going to harm an offspring by having children with them. In this world, though, sometimes third cousins can be closer genetically simply because cousins are marrying cousins because in past generations there could have been more inbreeding. Recessive genes become part of the DNA that is shared within the group. So if there was inbreeding years before, and if closer cousins become married and have an offspring, and then that offspring has some sort of genetic condition, that gene can become prevalent within the group. So even though two people may not be related, one of them could by their own ancestry carry a defective gene that can cause some sort of severe deformity in a child or a genetic condition that causes really bad outcomes for a child. And what we see in groups like the OB is there is a current gene that has made its way into the community and it causes children to have really, really, really curly hair. It can lead to sudden death. It can lead to total paralysis and inability to talk or walk. And when children like this are born, and I can't remember what the exact disorder is called, I just know that it's in this community. These kids are often kept from the group because they don't want the public to see that there's incidences of inbreeding within the group, right? In the case of Kody and Christine, they wouldn't be called inbreeding, but it's not to say that there's not inbreeding within their lines. Does that make sense? Because the Mormons that all moved to Utah, it was a small group of people, and many of them married within their families. And then within these cults in the earlier days, there was no people didn't care, like fathers were sending their girls to their brothers or to their sisters' husbands, so you were seeing uncles marrying daughters. You were seeing first cousins marrying. In some cases, you were seeing half-siblings married. And so genetically, the gene pool gets very messed up in these worlds, which is why Christine is saying she thinks she had to marry a convert, and then she still ends up marrying Kody, who's a distant third cousin, which Janelle makes the point of saying, well, that's not that abnormal. It's a small town. It's a small community, but Kody was from a totally different state. But because they're all part of that same group of Mormons that originally migrated to the western states, they all share common ancestors. So yes, there's always going to be a line unless they were a convert after the fact. But yeah, it sort of tells you what you're dealing with in this area where these groups are closed, and inside the groups, the only way that they can avoid birth problems and children dying, and getting charged with incest, is trying to convert people, which is what the op does. And they go into the Elds Church, and they pose as Elds people, and they pretend like they're Elds, and then they pull from the Elds, which is effectively how Kody and his family ends up getting converted. And it's how Janelle gets converted, and it's how Mary's father gets converted because they need new blood. And what they didn't realize was that Kody's blood wasn't all that new. Go figure. So Janelle was Mary's sister-in-law, and she marries her, and Kody marries her, and now you've got Kody married his cousin, which is just equally all kinds of weird. And for the record, Christine and David have no blood relation, so we're good there, right? And even David's just kind of weirded out by it. But if you talk to people in Utah, it's not that unusual. If you talk to people that are from the Elds faith, it's not that unusual. So yeah, we finally get the truth about them being linked. So she was a basement wife. Robin says they were basement wives, and she was doing it because she was uncool. And Kody and Christine are kissing cousins. Or we're loving cousins. So tell me what your ideas are in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed, and click the bell so you never miss a video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, besties.